Why would someone want to abolish the Department of Education? Educated people don't vote for their oppressors. One of the big reasons is federalism and constitutional law, the thought being that the federal government doesn't have the power to regulate public education as it is a state-run system. What they claim is that education should primarily be left up to the parents. In practice, what they want is to be able to replace proper education with their own propaganda. K-12 education is handled at the state and local level. The DOE is considered a redundant waste of taxpayer money by some people. The Federal Department of Education has little involvement in education in the U.S. It's almost entirely administered at the state levels. 7.8% of funding goes through the federal department. Because the department is teaching something they don't like. I really wish people could give straight answers to this sort of question. Even if you don't agree with it, at least be honest. The real answer is that some, generally Republicans, don't like the federal government setting education policy. They think Washington is out of touch and pushes for liberal policies that are offensive to conservative groups. They would rather have decisions made at the state or local level. And while many on here are bashing Republicans for this, imagine Trump had won again and the department were filled with religious zealots. I can promise you that you'd hear all sorts of liberal cities demanding greater autonomy. We already see that with objections to DeSantis's policies. Imagine that, but on a national scale. Having local control can act as a check on that. FTRI don't support the calls but can at least understand and articulate the argument. Because they believe that it's unnecessary. The theory is that the Department of Education is just a bunch of bureaucrats who use up massive amounts of money, create stacks of paperwork, and provide very few services in return. The problem, of course, is that those stacks of paperwork are what stops schools from remaining segregated, refusing to educate children with disabilities, and other fun stuff like that. But those considerations tend to get swept under the rug. The Department of Education is relatively new, only existing since 1979, so it's not some traditionally entrenched entity like the Treasury or Defense Department. Lots of well-educated people existed before 1979. Additionally, some people have concerns of varying validity regarding both the need and effectiveness of a federal body overseeing education, especially since the bulk of educational administration is still in the hands of the individual states. Why would someone want to abolish the Department of Education? Because in the U.S., we have a long-standing distrust for strong centralized government going back to the American Revolution. A federal Department of Education theoretically could strong-arm states into teaching certain curriculum or topics through leveraging funding. This curriculum could lead public education systems to indoctrinate children into believing that the U.S. should have a strong central government, as well as believing platforms and policies being pushed by federal politicians. We already have this to some degree. If you take a college history course taught by a British professor, he'll have a very different opinion on topics like why the Americans won the War of Independence, and the significance to America's contributions to World War II. The most fervent opposition in the U.S. today is more afraid that a federal Department of Education is going to indoctrinate children into liberal bias than anything else. Educators are already heavily left-leaning by virtue of most never working outside a profession that is paid by the government, provides full benefits and pension, and relies on tax dollars. But the door swings both ways. I had a physics professor say, G. Gravitational constant is set by God when he made the Earth. You cannot change G. Imagine if the Doe set that as an educational standard. No, he wasn't a southern white guy. He was Indian. Our education standards compared to some other nations are terrible, and the Department of Education as it stands could be responsible for that. Of course, the solution would be to abolish and immediately replace. Not just abolish entirely. Because the poorly educated are easier to control. You don't need critical thinking skills to rally round the flag. Stupid PPL are easily led by the nose. Example, Fox News viewers. Educated people are less likely to vote GOP. To dumb down the populace. Because they're still pissed off about having to send their kids to the same schools as brown people. If there is no federal, national oversight, it makes it easier for states to act to dumb down education. Remove books they find objectionable, and basically remove anything that discussed history of slavery, civil rights movement, anti-Semitism, shows LGBTQ+ in any sort of normal, positive light, etc. Basically, all the stuff going on in Florida. The GOP wants to be able to justify hate, discrimination and dumbing down education so that the masses are more easily manipulated. The Department of Education has long been a subject of heated debate, with many people arguing for its abolition. Reasons for wanting to abolish the Department of Education include the belief that local governments should have more say in educational policy, that the department is too bureaucratic, and that the federal government should not be responsible for educational spending. Ultimately, the decision to abolish the Department of Education should be decided by the people, as it affects everyone in the country. Education is the enemy of fascism. Because an educated, informed populace will most likely make smart choices and think for themselves. But stupid people make stupid choices and believe the loudest voice that tells them what to do and think regardless of whether it's in their own best interest. It's far easier to manipulate the uneducated.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.